Christmas.
Good evening and Happy New Year.
No logic to it.
I call this Town of Adams Board of Selectmen's meeting to order, Wednesday, January 4th, 2023. First item, could everyone please stand and join the board in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have two sets of minutes on the agenda. Item B, December 21st, 2022, those minutes are not ready for this evening. However, December 14th, 2022, the minutes are ready in your packet, and Rick was absent from that meeting. What is the board's pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead and make a motion to waive the reading of the minutes and approve them as submitted for Wednesday, December 14th, 2022.
Motion by Christine, do we have a second?
I second.
Second by Howard, discussion. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none, that's unanimous. And one abstention. Public comment, anyone in the audience who would like to speak with the board about any item that is not on this evening's agenda? Yes, ma'am, please come up to the podium. Right now? Okay. Sure. Please state your name and organization or reason you're
Pamela
here.
Sherman, representing my home
Okay.
and my issues with the community development program. Starting, I guess, can I hand you these pictures to look at what my house looks like at this moment after a project that started in October?
Sure, Kevin.
The garden bed was what I started with, and then the other two are what it looks like now, and the contractor's guy said, oh, that can be fixed. Well, no, you should replace it. You broke it while you're on my property. But to start with, several years ago, right before COVID hit, I applied for a grant. It was approved as soon as the lead inspector was supposed to come, COVID hit, and everything was on hold. This year, they finally got a bid with a contractor that would come do the job. From day one, the contractor was pretty much cutting corners, coming and going, disappearing, half doing jobs. As anyone knows, if you know a little bit, you do a roof, you do all the wood around it first, it's rotten. He threw a roof on my house. There's a roof there, but you can see in those pictures, there's still rotten wood around. It's never been closed up. What my project was, a roof, tear down 2 walls of a porch and put up new ones and do the inside, the porch. That partly got done. The inside's not finished. The community development people, mainly Rebecca, does not communicate. I have talked to Mr. St. John, because at the end of all this, he ended up involved in the meetings, but since before Christmas, the contractor has not been there. I've not heard anything definitive until today when Attorney St. John told me the contractor is backed out. I've been asking the community development department, whatever you call them, for some communication, we don't know, we're getting advice from the attorney, blah, blah, blah. We've had several meetings, and they've treated me like I'm nobody, like this is not my home. This contractor, and I questioned it all along, he put up vinyl siding on the two walls of the porch on the straight plywood. And I was questioning that. I was being like, oh, let it go between the inspector and the community development. I ended up he ended up taking off the siding to put on some barrier. But he didn't buy new barrier. He used 2 kinds because he ran out that he had around, and it was all pieced together. It's just stuff like that. It's been ongoing. He started this project October 14th, backed out was, like I said, was there, not there, he's not done. It's not done. My house is left exposed for the winter. And, I mean, the community development, when we first had a contractor before this one, I'm looking at a contract and they're looking at the bids. It was, at that point, I needed a chimney done. They had a bid of $10,000. I could not go through another winter without my chimney being rebuilt because people were going to be getting hit with bricks. So I had 3 union contractors, masons, look at that chimney and give me a bid of $1,000. I had it done for $1,000. On their contract, they had a bid for $10,000. Trying to tell me price of materials. No, it was just outrageous. And everyone I've told this story to, the first thing that comes to their mind is kickback. Because they wanted me to accept that bid. And this was a different contractor, not the one we ended up with. When I said, would you do this for your home? Well, if it was free money, I would. Excuse me? This is grant money I applied for and was approved for. I just wanted good work done in a timely fashion. I waited 3 years. I was looking forward to my home getting this part of it done, and it's been nothing but a nightmare. And it was explained to me when I got the contract, once there was a contractor, it would be between me and him. It didn't work that way. Becky from Community Development did not get out of the picture. She was with the contractor. She was going through him, and I kept saying, like, I need to speak to him. It delayed things. They questioned me when I asked. I mean, I just think somebody should know about this. I know this isn't going to get me anywhere. Not going to get my house done today, but I did reach out. I did leave messages for Selectmen office. I did leave message with the town administrator. I talked to his assistant and was told that he's a hands-off. He doesn't get involved in that stuff.
So I think we have a good idea. We have an idea of what your concerns are. I'm not familiar with the situation, but,
That's why I'm here.
okay. So an economic development team isn't here to speak to any questions that are raised, or the contractor, or anyone else that you brought up, which you have a right to speak, but I like to hear from, have both in a room usually to try to settle these things. But the town administrator and Attorney St. John, anything you'd like to add to this in regards to, familiar with it, or?
Oh, we're very familiar with it. Ms. Sherman is participating in the Housing Rehabilitation Program sponsored by the Community Development Office. The amount of necessary work required for Ms. Sherman's home actually exceeds what's allowable by the CDBG program, and the Community Development Office went to bat with CDBG program office, the state office, and got her additional money for her work well beyond what we've done for other residences. Ms. Sherman, as she articulated, takes exception to the quality of work and the kind of work and the means and methods of the contractor. The work was inspected multiple times, far beyond what a normal building inspector would by Mr. Garner, and took no exception to quality of work or method or means or anything along those lines. The Community Development Block Grant programming format required Ms. Sherman to actually pay the contractor. Checks would be issued to Ms. Sherman. Ms. Sherman would have to then forward them to the contractor. Ms. Sherman, because she allegedly was taking exception to the work, was not paying the contractor. The contractor felt he needed to get paid. The building inspector, again, took no problem with it. Eventually, this has gone on now for quite several months, actually putting the CDBG program in jeopardy for us. It's very challenging to get any contractors to participate in the housing rehab program to begin with. And this contractor at this point no longer wishes to participate in it and no longer wishes to work on Ms. Sherman's property due to whatever bad feelings there are between Ms. Sherman as the homeowner and the contractor. The Community Development Department came to me, asked for my advice as how to wrap this up so that there would at least be a successful program for Ms. Sherman, and at the same time extract the staff from it, because this incident was taking up quite a bit of their time. At that point, we asked Attorney St. John to step in to manage and essentially mediate or arbitrate a solution to it. In the meantime, Director Coughlin has gotten some direction from CDBG in terms of the finances, so the town is able to make the contractor whole for his materials, and for his labor, et cetera. And as of this morning, Mr. Coughlin briefed me on it, and I believe you folks met today. Is that right, Ed?
I haven't met with Mr. Coughlin yet.
But Ed's been involved the entire step. There's about $7,000 work left within the initial scope that was put together for Ms. Sherman's house. And the intent is the attempt to find one more contractor to complete the $7,000 worth of work so that Ms. Sherman's work is completed. And then at that point, all obligations will be met. Ed, I don't know if there was anything more you wanted to add to that.
Well, I just wanted to add, when I said I hadn't met with Mr. Coughlin, it was not this morning. I had a lengthy meeting with Mr. Coughlin, Ms. Ferguson, and with Ms. Sherman. We met here at Town Hall for probably about an hour, and that was before, that was basically to at least get the contractor paid for the work that was done. I believe it was to Ms. Sherman's reasonable satisfaction at that point, because she agreed to those payments so that the contractor would be paid for what he had done up to that point. That left, and it's clear that more work has to be done, and the contractor was unwilling, from my understanding, to go and proceed further with it, and it becomes a matter now of how are we going to, we need to get together and have a meeting. So Ms. Sherman called me up today, and I need to get together with Ms. Ferguson and Mr. Coughlin again, and Ms. Sherman. Hopefully next week we can get together and see if we can put our heads together and resolve this. I don't know that it can be resolved to your ultimate satisfaction, but we'll certainly work hard to do the best we can with what we have.
Okay, so it is the town's goal to try to make this happen, to complete the,
Can I add to that about payment? When the checks get requested, then they come in. When they came in, it was when when we had this meeting, it was agreed that we should sit down and get, it went too far, it went too long without getting completed. There should be a sit-down meeting with the contractor when I was gonna sign the checks and have a date when he was coming back to work and a specific time frame that he would finish it. He refused to attend that meeting when I was gonna sign the checks. So, and since then, I haven't gotten any communication until today when Mr. St. John returned my call.
okay, so we need to get the done for your house, right, is the plan, to meet
Get
with you.
it done,
and
yeah.
Get
Get her done.
Get her done, and also, the board, as we apply for the next grant, we can have some discussion in this area, and get better educated on how this process works. So what I'd like to do is for the, a meeting, maybe the second meeting in February, to bring this back up again and just see what's, the outcome of this, and put it to bed, if we can, status. Okay, so it'll be one of the meetings in February. The board will, town administrator will inform the board of the status of your situation.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
My purpose was just to let people know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to bring up any item that's not on this evening's agenda with the board? Okay. Next, old business. Item A, review and approve renewal of common vic license for James 410 LLC McDonald's, 2 Commercial Street, Adams, Mass. Now, we've dealt with these licenses, which are required to be completed by the end of the calendar year, which has since passed. We still have a few of these businesses that we're trying to close out the licenses, and some owe their taxes. So starting with McDonald's, 2 Commercial Street, what is the status of that, of the taxes and the licenses?
We'll turn it over to licensing administrator Hampman.
As of 4:55 today, there had not been payment on taxes after I called the treasurer collector's office to inquire about the status. Attorney St. John informed me that when he did send out certified letters following our last meeting, he did receive notification that it had been signed for and received. I have not received any communication from the folks. I have not received paperwork or payment. So I don't have anything I can ask you to
So we have no correspondence. They did sign for the registered letter. They're aware. Okay. Attorney St. John, my question to you is, so here we are. This is an unusual situation, at least since in my time here. What your thoughts on what is the board's any course of action that you can recommend or at least bring up for the board to consider?
Well, you have an application for renewal of the common victualer's license, and I suppose one thing you could do is deny it because you don't have a proper application, and you can also deny it on the basis of our town code, which is section 62-2, which allows you to deny, revoke a license where the delinquent taxes exist. So that's one reason. It's also covered under state law as well that permits that. So that's a possibility, and once that happens, then the business is operating without a license, and then what do you do when a business operates without a license? You can go to the extreme, if you will, and it's not really an extreme, but a remedy is to seek an injunction from a court and stop the operation of the business.
Rick?
Yeah, didn't the calendar revoke the license?
Well, the calendar it doesn't renew it. If the renewal did not take place, it technically is not operating on a license since beginning January 1st. So, you have that as well as you have the grounds for not renewing, which is the non-payment of taxes. So you have two bases. One is you don't have an application for renewal in front of you, my understanding is. And despite their receipt of a certified letter and sending a green card back to me saying that there was receipt of that certified letter, they've chosen not to follow through on the application. You have that as well. So you have that in the non-payment of taxes.
I would also add that Ms. Hampman has emailed, she's made multiple telephone calls consistently for at least the last month. I mean, short of any of us going over there and walking into that building and begging them to pay their taxes and to fill out an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper to get a $10 license, we're kind of befuddled as to what more to do for a business operating in our town. It's not a heavy lift.
It's 2 Big Macs.
I also did offer to go in person if that was the preferable way of receiving the paperwork.
No response. Christine, Chair of the Licensing Subcommittee, anything?
No, I think you've heard from Attorney St. John. There's really nothing for us to act on at this time, and by not acting on it, I guess in a timely manner, then they are operating without a license.
They're operating without a license right now.
Right, because of the calendar year.
Is there a financial remedy? Can they be fined?
Well, we don't have a financial remedy set forth in the statute or our code for doing that, so it appears the remedy is you have to go to a court, get an injunction because they're operating without a common victualer's license.
Yeah, and just for clarity, the common particular license, is that for indoor dining or is that for all operation, a lack of having the license?
Well, my belief is it's for any type of food service, whether it's takeout or whether it's in the restaurant.
I also don't believe they were inspected.
I don't think so.
I would need to check. I can't say it.
Because if they haven't, Jerry generally, in the inspection team, won't go out until, at a minimum, taxes are paid. Not so much some of the lesser licensing fees, but if he wouldn't go, I don't think, without payment of taxes, so that means their kitchen, et cetera, hasn't been inspected.
Joe, anything?
Yeah, my concern is about the tax delinquency. I don't understand why a McDonald's doesn't have the ability to pay their taxes. I think in the past we've had a little trouble with this particular person also. I don't know if it's gone this far, but he was, if I can remember correctly, he was late on, I believe, perhaps even his taxes. So I guess the best remedy, I would think, is to, call him one more time and say, hey, if we don't get your taxes soon, we're gonna close you down. I mean, you gotta kind of play his bluff. I don't understand how, you know, I know it's privately owned. This gentleman owns this McDonald's, owns others. So, I'm very concerned about not paying taxes. And along with that, did we get any food taxes from him?
Meals taxes
Meals
collected by
tax?
the state.
By the
The state
state? Did
pays
we get it? Did the state
The
get it?
state pays us, yes. Yep.
But the state did get it? Okay.
Okay, what is the board's pleasure on this?
I don't believe there's anything to act on because we do not have a renewal paperwork in hand.
My thought is, by the next meeting, if we do not receive any, all the requirements to obtain the common vic license, we start down the road of injunction and possibly closing McDonald's. The way I look at it is, we sent a registered letter. I thought that would be enough. They received it, signed for it. And I thought that would be enough to shake them to come down here and do what's needed to be done. Every business has to do the same thing in this town. So to allow one or two businesses to continue without doing what's required by the end of the calendar year of 2022 is not fair to the other businesses that do the right thing. So I'm not sure what else, to me, just to wait and wait is not a way to move forward. Is to, in 2 weeks on the agenda, we will discuss the next step. And maybe that's what it is, the next step. Can't wait forever.
Question, Attorney St. John. So the health inspection has not happened? So they're operating without a health inspection. If there's a case of food poisoning, does the town have any legal responsibility if there's a food poisoning case or any foodborne illness?
Well, my initial reaction is there's probably no liability to the town because our responsibilities are limited to the licensing aspect of it. And the failure to inspect is a duty that's imposed on us with respect to the continuance of that licensing process. But I don't want to test the waters on that either. I mean, I'm personally, I'm concerned about that when there's any kind of business operating under those circumstances, and we have an inspectional agency or a licensing agency in town that has the authority to do it. I know I mentioned this before with the station fire in West Warwick, Rhode Island, but, there were municipal and state agencies that were involved in the inspectional and licensing processes down there that got drawn into the conflict. I'm not going to say how liability was measured out in that situation, but I wouldn't want to be on the short end of that stick, if something bad happened.
I'll speak with Mr. Garner tomorrow about that side of it, and then, if need be, and if we do this, I certainly hope that no one ever says that Adams isn't business-friendly again. But if we have to, myself, Mr. Garner, and Chief Kelly can go pay a visit and ask to speak with the manager.
Perfect.
And relay to them what Chairman Duval said earlier, that your clock is running, and you've ignored every rational, normal business communication method to coerce you into police compliance, which are very reasonable requests. And then if not, in 2 weeks, we'll have to take further legal action.
Okay, so you will do that? You will send representation
We'll go.
from the town
I will
over to the
personally go.
McDonald's, meet with the manager, let me know, or if you want the chair of the license subcommittee to go wherever you want, and we'll go over and have a discussion. Because I think something needs to be done, because everyone else does it right, and this business is not. So it's a matter of being fair. We are pro-business, but we got to be fair. We got to follow the laws, and everyone needs to comply. So I'm glad that you brought that up, and you'll take some action, and you'll involve us if needed. And but in the next agenda, I'd like to see in the next agenda the same line, and we'll get at it again. Is that okay with the board? The town administrator will take the lead.
Yeah, through the chair, I'd feel more comfortable too if our town council was there, so that there's no problem with the communication and that type of thing, if you feel that's appropriate.
That, Town Administrator, if you feel you
No.
need,
Ed can buy me a
I'm
coffee.
available.
Yeah, Ed can buy me a coffee. We'll walk over.
okay?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
It's
Buying
across the
coffee, I'll
street
go.
from my office.
All right, so I think we've come to a consensus on this first one, item A. Item B, hope they get better. Review and approve application for common vic license for Dunkin' Donuts, 177 Columbia Street, Adams, Mass. I'll turn this over to the licensing subcommittee chair.
So I can report that the taxes have been paid, paperwork has been submitted, and license fee is on its way. And they've sent a photograph of the check that is in the mail. So with all of that said, I feel confident in putting forward a motion to approve the application for a common vic license for Dunkin' Donuts operating at 177 Columbia Street in Adams.
Is there any, Christine makes a motion, is there just a quick question? Can I have a second?
I'll say.
A second by Rick. Any, depending on, they did take a picture of the check.
Yeah,
We don't have it yet.
it's true. I should
Check's in the mail.
say, I should say,
Heard that one?
yep, I will amend my motion to include pending receipt of payment for their license.
Okay, do you agree with that? Okay, so, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Just that, I will mention that this is the first time that the manager of Dunkin' Donuts has had to go through this process. So the property had changed hands, so this has been an educational experience for that establishment, and we hope it'll go smoother next time.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, none, unanimous decision. Item C, review and approve renewal of auto sales license for Alternative Motors of Adams Incorporated, 69 Columbia Street, Adams, Mass. Christine?
So again, I can report that all taxes have been paid for Alternative Motors at 69 Columbia Street. That was the last thing we were waiting on. So with that, that license is also all set, and I'll make a motion to approve the renewal of the auto sales license for Alternative Motors of Adams operating at 69 Columbia Street.
Motion by Christine, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Rick, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, none, unanimous. And we have one more. Item D, review and approve renewal of inn holder's license for Mount Royal Inn, 99 Howland Ave, Adams. Christine?
I received a request from Attorney Grandchamp, who's here on behalf of Mount Royal Inn, to request a continuance or that this be tabled until the manager, Saeed, who we met with at our last meeting, can be in attendance. But Attorney Grandchamp is here if he wants to speak for himself. Or speak for Mount Royal Inn.
So thank you. So I am here on behalf of Mount Royal. Mr. Wakari is out of the country. He had a prearranged vacation. I am told he's in the United Arab Emirates where his sister is ill, and he expects to be back on January 11th, and he requested the opportunity to be present when the inspection occurred with Mr. Garner and Chief Pansecki. So we ask for a continuance or issuing the license pending a satisfactory inspection by a date certain. I understand the rest of the application may have been filed and all the taxes paid. Has that been confirmed? Yes. So that's what I would request. I'm happy to try to answer any questions within that limited scope if any member of the board has one.
Okay, so the last item to be completed is the inspection. A date has been requested of 1/11 or there.
I understand he's back in the country on January 11th.
Okay,
So I was leaving it, frankly, to Mr. Bokhari to coordinate that with Mr. Garner and Chief Pansecki.
Okay,
That's why I said a date certain after that. and
Sure.
Leave it to them to coordinate.
okay, discussion by the board? Rick?
Was this item tabled at our last meeting?
We could not take any action on it because he had not submitted the licensing paperwork at the time, so we did not table it.
Okay.
But now that the license he filled out the paperwork in the room at our meeting and paid the licensing fee after our meeting. So that is all in hand and we can take action at this time.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we table the renewal of in-holder's license for Mount Royal Inn.
Okay, motion by Rick, do we have a second?
I will second.
Second by Christine. So what that means is after the inspection is complete, then this will come back, we will take this off the table at the next board meeting to discuss, approve, whatever may be, right? That's the plan?
Yes, this should allow enough time for the inspection to take place while Mr. Bakari can be there in person for the inspection with Mr. Garner and have a report to the board prior to our next meeting, which I think would, a regular scheduled meeting, which would be January 19th, I think?
18th.
18th, thank you.
So tell him he has to have the inspection completed,
Between the 12th.
satisfaction prior to the 18th.
Yeah.
I'll tell him that.
Okay, great, thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, just one more question. Are they still operating? Because technically, they have no license.
Correct. They are still operating, but
Practically, they have no license. Yes, period.
So same liabilities as you mentioned before, what could happen, right? With them not having a
The
license.
there's a
Potential.
potential there. I
But
don't want to
legally-
identify or
Understood.
specifically say.
But legally, we could move forward again with going down the route, but we're going to, so when a business operates without a license in a community, there's no repercussion, the board has that decision, right? The licensing board, of what actions to take. There's
As a
no-
licensing board, you have, yeah, that's within your discretion.
In our discretion. There's no
Correct.
specific laws or bylaws that we have that would say, if this happens, do this. It's really up to the licensing board, our discretion.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second on the table. Any further discussion by the board?
Yes, if you could refresh my memory, what was the reason the inspection hadn't taken place yet before?
Mr. Bakari had not submitted his
And the
paperwork.
inspection can't happen until the paperwork is taken care of.
Correct. The fire chief did conduct his portion of the inspection, provided some information to the building commissioner about whether or not he was comfortable. That report was given to us. And the building inspector asked for additional information from Mr. Bakari, which he had not provided prior to December 21st, when our board met. So all of this relies on Mr. Bakari, who did not supply the proper documentation and information to get an inspection in a timely manner, nor for this board to act on his license in a timely manner for the 4th year in a row.
I am personally uncomfortable with letting these people operate without a license. I hear, in my mind, I hear that story about a candle unattended in a room with broken fire, smoke alarms. Talked about the fire in West Warwick in Rhode Island where 30 people were killed or so, because this isn't that egregious, but it's moving in that direction. And Mr. Bakari did not offer a good explanation of why for 4 years in a row he hasn't acted in a timely way. So it puts the town in a precarious position. And I think we should discuss how long are we gonna let this go on until we really have a disaster on our hands, because he's pushing us. And there's negligence involved. So I think we need to have I would like to hear a discussion about this. Open candles, unattended, with broken fire alarms, smoke detectors, that's pretty frightening.
And our only course of action would be to file an injunction at this time, to close
Yeah,
down
that's-
the motel,
That's our course of action, is to do that.
because we don't have a structure in place to fine an establishment who is operating without a license at this time that we have found.
Right.
So that is something that the board should take up about whether or not we put something in place that has a little bit more teeth going forward. Although I think we've all operated assuming that businesses would act in good faith and in a timely manner, and we have found that to be quite difficult this particular year.
What is the, I'm sorry.
Am I correct, or I'm just
Well, what do you
looking?
mean by a structure in place? You mean like a series of fines, that type of, well, you could pass bylaws to put some teeth into it to say if you don't renew your license, then you can be fined $100 or something like that. And, you know, Mr. Rosenberg raises the concern to me, which he and I are probably on the same wavelength on this, is I'm a little nervous about it too. You know, whether the step ought to be not just simply hitting somebody with a monetary fine that they can pay very easily, but whether it ought to be just closed down, because not in addition to not paying your $10 common vic fee or your innkeeper fee, whatever the license fee is, you haven't allowed an inspection, and you don't have a complete fire inspection. There's allegations of candles being lit, smoke detectors being
The
disconnected.
chief actually saw it.
Right, I'm calling it an allegation because,
Fair
you know,
enough.
it is what it
Good
is.
attorney.
To me, it's an accusation right now, and, you know, it's not fair to Attorney Grandchamp to say, well, you better defend this right now and tell us all about it, but
Thank you. I'm here for a very limited purpose, just to speak for Mr. Bukhari and request an extension.
right, I don't want to put him on the spot, but, you know, you can go that far, and if the chief, you know, says to me, look, here's what I found, and the building inspector says, this is what I've seen, and we have these other allegations regarding the failure to keep records, and police going down there and not being able to look at the register and find out who's staying there. Do we know who stays there? How long are they? You know, the whole thing unravels into a Pandora's box. That leads to an injunction.
Yeah.
What is the injunction process and timing with the courts?
Well, as I envision it, it's an application, it's a complaint, a legal complaint that's filed with the Superior Court, local Berkshire County Superior Court, and it would be a request, the first request would be for an emergency or preliminary injunction requesting the immediate shutdown of the business because of the failure to do X, Y, and Z. And there would be a hearing, you know, the court would require a two-party hearing at some point along the way. If it deems the emergency to be so high, it could issue it what's called ex parte, which is, you know, the town of Adams coming in by itself saying, we need this done right now to prevent, you know, a calamity from happening. That's how the sequence goes. But a preliminary injunction, if it's not an immediate emergency injunction, ex parte injunction being ordered, a preliminary injunction would probably be held, a hearing on that within 3 to 10 days. So it's rather quick.
Can I just offer a suggestion? That first, if it's possible, first Chief Pansecchi goes in and does the emergency or whatever you call it, inspection, like on this random inspection. And if everything's perfect and all the smoke detectors are working, then we can think about avoiding the injunction. But he goes in there and finds out covered smoke detectors or any violation or the central panel's not working like it wasn't before, then we issue the injunction. So it's not like we're being random about it.
No, I mean, you have to remember that you're going onto someone else's property too. The
Understood.
chief just doesn't walk onto the property, so either the owner consents to it, and he's not here to consent to it, or the chief or the building inspector gets what's called an administrative search warrant and goes in based on probable cause being we found X, Y, and Z previously, and we're concerned that there's a harm to public health and safety.
Okay.
Can I ask? Oh,
I was just say, just to remind the board and everyone at home, there were essentially 3 layers of issues. The first one being that he's operating as an innkeeper, which under the building code only allows people to stay within the rooms for 30 days. Initially, the board couldn't take any action on that because the property owner failed to supply any of the paperwork, failed to pay taxes, again, was non-compliant with any requests from the town. That matter has since been resolved, And what's in front of you tonight is essentially that paperwork has been filed, and now he requires an inspection. I think it's smart that he be there for the inspection, but you're correct in framing the issue that we are not going to get there to take a look at it until he appears, which a week may or may not be reasonable depending upon who's looking at it. However, I would suggest to you that unless some of the issues that were raised 2 weeks ago have since been resolved, the building inspector and the fire chief will likely find the same evidence that they had, which they believe the use of the property exceeds that to which it's been permitted, which I would suggest, and Ed can confirm, is a secondary issue as well. So even before we get to that injunction, they're gonna have to go inspect the property just to approve him to be an innkeeper, and they're probably gonna find, I would say, the similar issues that they've been finding the last time they were there.
Okay.
Which will be another matter that the board has to take up.
Yeah, through the chair, Jay, you just mentioned they did clarify the people that were staying there. I remember at the last meeting, the prolonged meeting we had, that someone would be allowed to go down there and to look at the roster of people that were there, so that did take place.
The roster was provided electronically by the property owner, but no one from the inspectional services team has been on site.
Okay.
But he sent, I didn't look at it, it wasn't provided to me, but I believe he provided what was asked.
Mr. Garner sent an email indicating that it was not complete.
Oh, okay.
That was earlier today. Is that
And
correct, Bree?
that rule, just to remind everybody, is essentially the innkeeper has to keep an active log as to who's in what room, and that's mandated by state law in order to do that. That wasn't in compliance, either, which frankly could be easily rectified, but.
If I may offer just a bit of clarification, because the communication did come in from Mr. Gardner later in the afternoon today, but he sent me an email which included a log that had been kept by the Lewison House of their individuals who they were having stay there. However, when Mr. Bacari was up here 2 weeks ago, whenever that was, and stated that he will pull up this register online, Mr. Gardner did request that and has not received that full log as requested.
So we've been here before. The board, the licensing board, in regards to a local establishment, did not have the inspection as required by the 31st of December, a year from the past. The board at the time indicated you will close down at midnight. The chief of police was sent, and the establishment was closed down. And as more I listen to this, we are the Board of Selectmen, we act as the town's licensing board. I just don't understand how we can go forward this evening with not starting the injunction process. At least starting it and start going through that process for all three entities. I'll name them by name, is the Mount Royal Inn, or maybe it's two, and the McDonald's. The other two have taken care of things. I cannot see us moving forward with these businesses operating without licenses, and the licensing board are going to wait until things happen, which I've already supported. So as a member, and what we've done in the past, we didn't have, we took care of business, and if they didn't have it done, and they were shut down, and they've lost revenue because of it, but we did the right thing, and we covered the town's liabilities, and the citizens of this community, we did what we are required to do. This should have been done by now, for all these businesses. We continue to do this. We're on January 4th, and we've been after them, the Mount Royal Inn for 4 years, as we discussed the last meeting over and over again. So my opinion is that, myself, I can't move forward this evening without having a motion to start the injunction process to shut these businesses down until all payments and all licenses have been received by the town of Adams. We are taking one heck of a chance by being I speak for myself, being the nice person to give them more time, they have not responded, well, at least in McDonald's case, they have not responded to us. Numerous times we've been working at trying to get that from them. And we, as the licensing board, are going to let them operate without a license which could result in liability for the town. And hopefully it won't, but it could. So we can't operate that way as a board of selectmen and as a licensing board, in my opinion. So I would like to start the process, and then things may move quickly when that process is started, and these will be taken care of in a relatively short order when people are aware that this is the process that's going, that the licensing board has started. How can you walk out of here when the board itself is liable for what may happen, the town and the licensing board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to start the injunction process on the McDonald's and the Mount Royal Inn, and follow through until all inspections and licensing and tax payments have been.
Point of order, there's already a motion on the table to
Right.
table this, so we
Yeah,
do need a
We'll
vote.
wait for that, complete that vote. So I have a motion on the table. Christine made the motion, Rick seconded, of tabling the approved renewal of in-holders license from Mount Royal Inn, 90 Holland Ave, Adams, Mass. And we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none, unanimous decision. So we will address this at our next board meeting, the status of where they are. Howard?
Can I just interrupt?
Please.
And ask for legality? Can we actually do that tonight, as it's not an agenda item? Or do we have to either do a special meeting or?
No, I would say they can make that motion.
It's on
Well,
the-
you can, it's on the agenda to
Right.
review and approve renewal on these licenses, so it is on the agenda. Your action is to table whether you're going to approve this or renew the license. So it's on, the motion's proper, it's a proper item of discussion because it's on the agenda.
Okay.
Howard?
I make a motion to initiate the injunction process against the McDonald's on 2 Commercial Street and the Mount Royal Inn, 99 Howland Avenue, until they are within compliance on our taxation, inspection, and licensing approval process.
Do we have a second? I'll second that motion. Discussion, Joe?
Just for clarification, we've already made a decision on McDonald's. Does that need to be rescinded?
We didn't take any action
You
because
didn't take any action?
they didn't supply us with any paperwork.
Okay,
We'll still go visit.
Yeah, that's the plan.
okay, all right.
So the hope is that when you do get the visit, when they know the injunction process has started, that we will receive payment of taxes and everything else we need relatively quickly.
Could, Mr. Chair,
Yes,
could
sir.
I call Attorney Grandchamp back up, please? Just for clarification, the gentleman that's the owner is away on vacation, correct? And he'll be back, you said the 11th?
I'm told that he had to leave the country to visit
Okay.
his ill sister and will be back on the 11th.
Well, the reason I'm asking, because he was very vehement about when he was here the last time that he had, I don't know what they were for relatives, but 2 that were staying there that had a hard time with English. But one gentleman, I think it was his nephew or something, was very fluent in English. So, possible suggestion is do you have a way of getting a hold of your client while he's away?
I can email him and I will notify him whatever the board decides tonight.
Yeah, because this would be, very tough for him to take, but if he has a nephew who has worked there before and he felt very confident in his ability to do the work there when he was at this podium, to have him go with Chief Panchecki and our building commissioner Gardner to go through if that would be amendable to him, because he certainly wasn't aware that this would be a possibility at today's meeting.
I wasn't here at the meeting, I don't know what was said. I can only assume by the nature of the request that he be present for the inspection, that Mr. Bukhari does not feel comfortable with his nephew handling that.
Okay.
But that is purely an assumption on my part, based on why I'm here.
Okay, because I don't think that his comfort level may change if he knew that what we're about to vote on was going to take place. Because one problem I have is that, as we know, they're in a contract with the Lewison House. And I worry about people that are homeless. And if they're shut down and the Lewison House is at capacity, where do these people go? So, you know, that's a concern on my part, and that's just a suggestion, and I think the board members can, my statements are true that he was quite confident with the young cousin or whoever the relation was there, that he did everything well because he could speak English, and he didn't bring to the forefront that his relatives that are living there weren't able to speak fluent English.
I can only say that I will pass on
Okay.
what the board decides and tell him what the potential consequences are, and he can decide how he wants to proceed from there.
Okay, thank you.
It's the best I can offer.
Yeah, I understand.
Any other questions?
Member Novak, I have a comment that may address some of your issues. The Lewiston House has been advised at the previous meeting, the seriousness of the situation and how out of compliance from a safety perspective the Mount Royal Inn is. So they're on notice of that the Mount Royal Inn has not met their compliance obligations. So this isn't a surprise, Joe, this is not a surprise to
Oh,
the
no,
Lewiston
no,
House.
I'm not saying it's a surprise, but it's a reality.
Yeah, and the town is, I believe, is doing what we're responsible to do, is
Yeah.
provide a minimum safety standard as required by
I
law.
agree.
So I just want to go on record as saying, we are doing our responsibility, and we've notified all parties of what the situation is. So we're not acting arbitrarily or at the spur of the moment. This is well thought out, and the behavior patterns have been going on for 4 years.
I'll be sure to notify Mr. Bukhari.
Right. And as Vice Chair Hoyt has mentioned, that from her discussion with the inn, they did not come back with a responsible answer of why this is happening. So I think we need to set a precedent and stop it now before the situation gets more serious. Thank you.
Any further discussion? And I hope this action will result in, as we discussed, that McDonald's will hopefully very quickly take care of what they need to do, and the Mount Royal Inn owner will maybe have someone else be with the inspectors and take care of that quickly, so there won't be any repercussions, but I think we need to start down this path, in my opinion. Okay, so any further discussion? Ed, you got anything else you want to add? You good?
Nope, I don't.
Ed? Sorry, Jay? You fine? All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Was
All-
it seconded? Was the
I
motion
don't know
seconded?
if it was second.
John seconded it.
I seconded the
Yeah,
motion.
John did second, yeah.
That's okay. All right, so we have motion second. I'll do it one more time, sorry. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, none, unanimous decision. Thank you. I believe, anything else on the old business? New business, we have nothing. We've been on vacation, we've had the holidays, and really, this meeting came up quick, so there's not a lot in this agenda. There will be a workshop next week, so we can get started back up with the new year with operations, so this agenda has been very limited. Subcommittee and liaison reports. Anyone have anything they'd like to report in that area?
Yes, just quickly, in regards to the Northwest Woodlands Partnership, we were fortunate enough to receive $540,000 through the omnibus bill, so that is going to give us some traction to move forward.
Fantastic, thank you, Joe. Anyone else have anything to report? Okay, announcements and go to the order. Howard?
Yes, I want to compliment the Department of Public Works for clearing the roads during the storms, and they're pretty severe, and there were some complaints, but all in all, it was done, and the roads were safe, as opposed to Pittsfield, which had 80 accidents. So I think as a contrast, we can see that the DPW is doing its job.
Okay, thank you. Christine?
I have nothing.
Rick?
I have nothing.
Joe?
Yes, I just have a couple questions. As far as when Mrs. Sherman was in here, when a community development block grant is signed, is there a time allotment when the work needs to be finished? Okay, so there's no,
It should be done within the fiscal year of the grant, but most of those projects always go from year to year. It usually takes a good 2-year, 3-year cycle for a grant to be closed out, so there's not.
okay, and then secondly, I was just wondering, I know that we just received $25,000 for the youth center, and the memorial building has been purchased. When these being town properties, when we turn them over, I think I've asked this before, are there any parameters or milestones that need to be met by the developer during the signature as far as time frame goes to when things should be done?
Yes?
And they have been on the 2 that have been signed.
Well, Adams Memorial School is still, the building is still owned by the town. That hasn't been sold yet because the developer still is acquiring his financing. He's within that 18-month period that he wanted to obtain financing. So the town still owns that. Once the developer says, I have my capital stack, I have my funding ready to go, then we sit down and we negotiate what those development goals are. So we're still early because he hasn't yet come up with all the money he needs to convert it into the vision that was chosen. For 20 East Street, the development agreement was signed with milestones. That was presented by Mr. Coughlin to the board. And then they also signed the standard purchase and sale agreement. And both of those documents were monitored by Ed. They've signed both.
Okay, so as far as the memorial building, if this gentleman can't come up with the money, he can just say, I can't come up with the money, and the building goes back?
We search again for another developer. But he's not giving up, and he's not having abnormal issues. It's just financing these projects, particularly in the Berkshires for housing, not an easy task. And that's a pretty hefty project.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. All right, I guess that's it. Motion to adjourn.
So move.
Motion by Rick,
Second.
second by Christine. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.